Hi everyone, here's what's bothering me today.
We're flying over northern Russia to look at a climate emergency. Siberia is smoldering and it's burning, and all of this is releasing record amounts of carbon. A heat wave has been fueling it. And because Siberia is so big, tackling these fires is so difficult. This region alone, Yakutia, is 13 times the size of Britain.
The Arctic Circle has seen its highest ever recorded temperatures. Temperatures in the Arctic Circle are likely to have hit an all-time record on Saturday, reaching a scorching 38 degrees Celsius or 100 degrees Fahrenheit for you Americans. In Verkhoyansk, a Siberian town, the record still needs to be verified, but it appears to have been 18 degrees Celsius higher than the average maximum daily temperature in June. Now, granted, Siberia is a land of extremes. You can experience extreme heat and, rather famously, extreme cold. However, this is definitely well above the norm. And this town sits within the Arctic Circle, which is usually seen as a very unique and isolated and remote and extremely northern place. And yet here it is, catching on fire. This is due to a persistent heat wave, which is no doubt caused by human impacts on the climate. And I remind people that the Arctic has warmed. Welcome to the Sunday Sum Up, people. And we are just getting started. We're going to stick with climate change for a little bit. And so this next story that came to my attention and really concerned me was how Texans woke up sweating in their homes because their smart thermostats were being raised remotely. Some said they didn't know their thermostats were being accessed from afar until it was almost 80 degrees inside their homes. Some neighbors in the Houston area said their homes have been much warmer this week, even while they are running their air conditioners. Many of them claim someone has been turning up the temperature on their thermostats since the energy shortage began. So this has to do with Texas being in, regional news somewhat recently, because remember how back in the winter, several Texans froze to death and it was a huge problem providing heat for Texans during this really terrible cold snap? Well, they're apparently having similar problems in the summer, where the heat and the demand is so intense that the Electric Reliability Council of Texas asked Texans to turn up their temperatures on their thermostats this week because demand is so high that they don't have enough energy or power in their independent grid to meet the demand that people are having during the heat. But really, the story from a Texan family is just so harrowing and dystopian. When Deer Park resident Brandon English got home from work on Wednesday, his house was hot. My wife had it cranked down at 2:30, English said. It takes a long time for this house to get cool when it gets that hot. English's wife and their daughters decided to take their afternoon nap earlier in the day. They'd been asleep long enough that the house had already gotten to 78 degrees, English said, so they woke up sweating. Without anyone touching it, they said their thermostat was changed while they were sleeping, making their home unbearably hot. Was my daughter at the point of overheating, English said. She's 3 months old. They dehydrate very quickly. His wife received an alert on her phone soon after that. The family said their thermostat had been changed remotely, raising the temperature of their home during a 3-hour energy-saving event. That is fucked. And here's why that's even more fucked. The family's smart thermostat was installed a few years ago as part of a new home security package. Many smart thermostats can apparently be enrolled in a program called Smart Savers Texas, and it's operated by a company called Energy Hub. So apparently, in exchange for entry into a sweepstakes, this then grants the company the ability to change your thermostat remotely. I wonder how many other terrible things have been hidden in sweepstakes and other terms of service and user license agreements that we've agreed to over the past years. Like, that is just, it is so horrifying. But hey, we're not entirely done with the heat and the climate change and everything yet. This isn't really a single news story per se, but I personally am really tired of hearing about this space race between, who's going to get to space first? Richard Branson, Jeff Bezos, maybe even Elon Musk will just show up and, for the meme, he'll just beat everyone. these people, if they're allowed to have a space race with each other, then they are not nearly being taxed enough. As this person so wonderfully put it, we're way past the point of talking about what's reasonable. Power lines are melting in the heat in Portland. Billionaires are paying no taxes and going to space. Buildings and bridges are collapsing. The only reasonable thing to do is change everything. Yeah, I agree. If people like Richard Branson and Jeff Bezos can be in the news because, which rich asshole's gonna get to space first, then maybe we should tax them? Instead of letting them play with their things and have these ego boosts, maybe we can force them to actually help fix the planet they've so ruthlessly exploited. Which brings us to our next story. Linton First Nation acting chief frustrated with lack of communication from CN. John Hogan says CN should remain off-site and not try to repair infrastructure until fire is out. So as some people may have heard recently, due to the heat wave in the Pacific Northwest that was especially felt by the people of BC here in Canada, one such town called Linton basically went up in flames in just like 15 minutes. The people had almost no time to gather and evacuate, and the entire town has pretty much been destroyed. And while they're still doing investigations, there's allegations right now that the fire was caused by a freight train that was on fire that was moving through the area. Now, that still needs to be verified, but even then, that's just like, what the hell? But apparently, in the wake of that, a lot of the First Nations communities surrounding Linton were not consulted with or were communicated with very effectively by the government or by this corporation. And so to bring it back to this article, Hogan was one of several people providing updates about the wildfires in the Thompson-Nicola Regional District and spoke about the situation in Linton, where a fire that started on June 30th has destroyed 90% of the town. What really concerns me right now is different organizations like CN right next to my community, he said at the information session. On IR-24, we still have a standing gas station on that reserve, and there was a huge structure fire to the CN bridge that crosses the Thompson River. I actually am hoping that CN will stay out of there and not try to repair their bridge until this fire is completely out. We want them to be off-site as well, and we want communication with them. They haven't really communicated their work strategy to us. We're just really ticked that they think they're so super powerful that they're going to get their economy and their trains rolling before they even talk with us. And the acting chief raises a really good point there. This company that may or may not be responsible for the fire already wants to go in to get the bridges going again because, the economy. People just lost their entire livelihood, and it may potentially be your fault. And again, the First Nations communities in that area were not consulted. Very few of them even got evacuation orders. They had to hear it from other people. And I think one person or one community only heard from like a BC provincial government agency, and it was due to a conflict about like their horses or their cattle or something. That's how they found out. Which is just more proof that even though we make a good talk about reconciliation, we never see it in our actions. And related to reconciliation, we Canadians also continue to struggle with racism. And that brings me to the next story. So remember how a while ago the nation was shocked and horrified by the man in London, Ontario, who ran over a Muslim family, killing most of them except for a little boy for the crime of being Muslim? I and others talked about that a whole bunch, and I believe they're still trying to press hate crime charges on him. But here's the thing. There's been another instance of racism in London, Ontario. London man faces assault charges in racially motivated assault. Police say they were called after a vehicle was spotted driving recklessly down a residential street close to members of a family standing outside. Police say an argument ensued between the driver and a family member, which resulted in the driver uttering racially motivated comments toward the family. Police say the driver and passenger proceeded to exit the vehicle holding a metal bat and a large hunting knife and approached and threatened civilians in the area. No injuries were sustained, and both the driver and passenger returned to the vehicle and fled the area before police responded. Police were able to identify the driver, and at approximately 11 p.m. on June 25th, police arrested Gregory Vanelstein, 37, and charged him with 3 counts of assault with a weapon, 1 count of dangerous operation of a vehicle, 1 count of operation of a vehicle while prohibited, and 1 count of failing to comply with release order. So, yeah, I know that's from a while ago, but I'm only able to just get to this now after so much other stuff has happened and being busy and the anniversary project and all that. But again, thank you to Ninetales for bringing this to my attention. So while they can't, completely charge the man with a hate crime, it was very clear to all involved that the attack and the verbal abuse were racially motivated. And that is again in the site where Canada's most recent domestic terror attack happened. So, maybe we still really have this problem with racism and white rage. So people like Matt Gaetz and Tucker Carlson should maybe take a lesson from here north of the border and try and take it seriously for once. And then also from Canada, and brought to me from someone else who wanted me to cover this story, is a story from Ottawa, the nation's capital. They first heard about this through Reddit, so that's the main link I have, but there's plenty of other links that I'll provide down below. Apparently this is a PSA from a pharmacy tech in Ottawa, and it's about the Moderna vaccine. Hello guys, this is a PSA from a pharmacy tech in Ottawa. We are receiving a lot of shipments of Moderna vaccines and have had a high level of resistance booking appointments for them. When we had Pfizer, we were filling up in hours. Currently, we struggle to book 40 appointments a day for Moderna shots. If you believe in the vaccine and are due for your second shot, even if you had Pfizer as your first dose, I implore you to get the Moderna as the second if possible. There are 2 main reasons for this. The first is the fact that Pfizer should be reserved, if possible, for children 12 to 18 because it is their only option right now. Every adult taking a Pfizer when Moderna is available is one less vaccine in a child's arm. And yeah, unfortunately, this is well documented. Vaccine shopping is unfortunately a thing. And it's not like the Moderna is less effective than the Pfizer. If it is, it's by like percentages of percentages. It is minimal. And again, if we want total herd immunity and we want to even inoculate the young people in our nation, Pfizer is the only availability for them, at least right now. And Moderna is still effective, and we have a whole bunch of doses. And the vaccines have a shelf life. When I got jabbed, I didn't care. I found out, oh yeah, it is Pfizer. But if they had said, oh, it's Moderna, I'm like, cool, still a vaccine. This is so ridiculous, and it's just dragging things out even more. So yeah, that definitely bothers me today, that people are vaccine shopping when really we should just be happy to get a effective, safe, or relatively safe vaccine in our arms. And leave the Pfizer, of which there are less doses to go around, for young people, since that is really their only option. And if we want things to get back to normal, that includes having our young people vaccinated, which means save the Pfizer for them if we need to. And there's apparently plenty of Moderna to go around. Like, what is wrong with us? I am so tired of this pandemic. Anyway, on to our next and final story. Remember those Indian protests from a while back? I covered them and several other people began to cover them, as the Western media sure as hell did not. Those protests are still going on, by the way. But here's the thing. While those protests have been going on, teachers here in Canada have wanted to talk about it. And that has apparently upset the Indian government. India's Consulate General asks Canadian schools to remove content on farmers' protest. Yeah, apparently the Indian consulate in Toronto claimed that the content was based on disinformation and could hamper bilateral relations between New Delhi and Toronto. And this Twitter account, Sanam Wazir, actually has a link, or rather a photocopied version of the statement from the Indian consulate. Apparently, according to them, the material poses a security threat and could poison relations between India and Canada. Totally something a not guilty party would ask for, right? In a letter dated March 11th, the Consulate General said that the study material used by some schools in Peel, Toronto, and York districts pushes a polarizing narrative, creates hatred against India, and is based on disinformation. The Consulate General would further like to state that it considers this incident to be extremely serious and views it as a conspiracy to sabotage the goodwill and warm, friendly relations between India and Canada by inimical entities to further their own nefarious agenda, the letter stated. Like I said, I'll post the link down below, but please go to the Twitter account and read the entire statement. It is hilarious, but also really terrifying in terms of the audacity and how much India is embarrassed by these protests, that people talking about it around the world becomes the target of their ire. And we're apparently telling people and educating people about why the protests are happening in opposition to brutal reforms that would hurt farmers, which is why the farmers are protesting. Apparently, reporting on that is harmful to India. Then maybe stop harming yourselves. I don't know, like maybe do that. Have you tried not being shit? So yeah, that is the capstone on this week's Sunday sum up. We had a lot of climate change related news, good bunch of Canadian content, all of which was terrifying and depressing. Thankfully, we could end on like a slightly hilarious note here, but still alarming. And I think if anything, that's probably the theme that I'm taking away from this week. Alarming news from the Arctic, alarming news from the States, alarming news just related to the climate in general, alarming news about businesses seeing only profits and being the first somewhere or back to work rather than the communities and people in the world that they're negatively impacting. And it's alarming to see vaccine shopping and hesitancy to get the still perfectly good Moderna vaccine. And it's alarming to see the Indian government take issue with people educating them and providing news about something that is happening in India. It is alarming. And I and others are trying our best to ring alarm bells. But will people listen? Who knows? We have no guarantee of that. We have no guarantee that this video will be seen and blow up and people will learn something new and try and bring attention to it. We have no guarantee that the wealthy will be taxed at an appropriate rate. We have no guarantee that governments will actually meet their targets for climate change. We don't know. And in a world of uncertainty, that makes trying to plan for the future a very dizzying prospect. And we keep chronicling and making note of all these terrible different things. The Arctic, above the Arctic Circle, is 100 degrees Fahrenheit. We all want to get past this pandemic, and yet we're making it more difficult for ourselves to do that. All this and so much more is so alarming, and that's what's bothering me today.